Hello, everyone. I'm Lance Barrow, along with the Hall of Famer Gary Patterson, the great TCU coach, and our little podcast. It's not about me, Gary, that we started down this road a few months ago. I think today I've been as excited about our guests as I've been with any of our guests, and we've had unbelievable guests from Jim Nance, Mac Brown, Jack Nicklaus, Matt Carpenter, the Hall of Famer Luke Kuechly. And now, I was thinking about this morning. When you talk about sports and you bring up a name, you bring up baseball, first thing people talk about Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle. Football, Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. Boxing, obviously Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
When you talk about horse racing, one of the first names that comes up is Bob Baffert. And that's our guest here today on It's Not About Me podcast. Bob, thank you for doing this. Thank you for taking the time to join us here.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's thanks for the introduction. And I'm ready to have some fun with you guys.
Well, good. Let's start off right off the bat. The big question is, we're about maybe 5 miles from the TCU campus. We can look out and see Amon Carter Field, where Gary made his name and made TCU a lot of publicity because of his coaching. You have a stake in TCU right now. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yes, I did a deep dive. Gary actually put TCU football on the map there. No, we were looking at colleges, and my son Bodie, he just, for some reason, he wanted to check out TCU. And I remember going down there and checking it out with my wife, Jill. And we just fell in love with the place. It is just beautiful school. I just love the area. I love Fort Worth. And I'm from Nogales. I grew up on a ranch. So when I got to the stockyards and went down there and hit all those Western stores, the cowboy came out in me, and I said, this is it. We need to come here.
And he's enjoyed it. He's a junior at TCU. I know I've seen you out at Del Mar with him and Jill, and he talks about how much he enjoys it. And football season starts. I think their first home game is against my university where I played football, and it's also Parents Weekend, Gary, at Abilene Christian comes to Fort Worth. And your son has really enjoyed not only TCU but experience in Fort Worth.
Yeah, he's really enjoyed it. He loved going back. He was here in Del Mar, but he couldn't wait to get back and with his friends. Loves the school there, and it's just a great school. And he's really, I can tell the difference. He's come back, and he's got a lot of good friends there, and he just really enjoyed it. And I love going there, and I love hitting the stockyards. First place I go is Letty's and go get some boots. You got to get the boots and the hats and everything else. And but it's just a wonderful area down there.
It's not horse racing, but they do have big rodeo, and then cutting horse is kind of the center of the world here. So it's not what you do, but it's we still get a chance to have a little bit of something around horses and doing things they need to do. It's been fun when that time of the year comes about.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is about California, a lot of young kids, they've never seen a cow or they don't want a horse or anything. You go to Texas and I feel right at home there, growing up on the border on a ranch. So it's like, to me, I feel at home.
Let's go back there. You grew up on a ranch there in Arizona. Your dad had bought some quarter horses, and I didn't really know this until our good friend, mutual good friend Bill Strauss mentioned to me that you started as a jockey riding quarter horses. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, sort of. What happened, I was about 11 years old. My father decided to had a couple mares, and somebody told him they're bred to race, so he sent them out and to these trainers. And I just sort of would tag along with him to the little bush tracks around Arizona, and I just became in love with horse racing. I just became horse crazy and I loved going with him to all the races growing up. And by the time I was like 14, I loved riding horses anyway, quarter horses. I started with quarter horses, and so I thought, well, maybe I can be a jockey and I can be the exercise boy. And what we did, we cut out our own little track in our field, one of our fields, and we got a starting gate, little 4-horse starting gate, and then we started training our own little horses. And I would gallop them, get up before I went to school, high school, and then come back, and then I started riding these little match races there by the border. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, as a kid, it was sort of dangerous, but you don't realize it until you get older. But that's how I started. And I rode a few races. I was too big, and I wasn't. A lot of the top jockeys that knew me, they always say, they don't say, I remember when you were a jockey. They say, I remember when you were trying to ride, Bob. See, that's a big difference, And so I would have been a walk-on that never made it, and so but I really enjoyed it, and to me, it was a thrill winning my first race. I remember at Flagstaff, Arizona. It felt like winning the Kentucky Derby, and then it was just something that I got it out of my system, but I was too big fighting the way. I was just too big, but I really enjoyed it.
People become good at something because they love it. Me coaching, being part of football was, it was never a job. From everything that I've read about you and doing it, it seems to me that that's exactly the way you are with what you've done, and why you've been so good at it is because it seems like to you it's not a job, it's just a passion.
Yeah, you're right, Gary. It's one of those things where you can't wait to go out there. You're working outdoors. You can't beat that. When you're working outdoors, and you're working with these beautiful animals, and you're always wondering who is going to be the next champion, the best great horse. We deal with a lot of young horses. We're developing them. Like right now, a lot of the 2-year-olds that we have we're looking forward to them. And like Charlie Whittingham, the great racehorse trainer, he always said, he had a saying, nobody ever committed suicide when they had a good 2-year-old in the barn, And so, and it's that what keeps us going. There's that dream of maybe this is the one. And that's what, as a horse trainer, not only, I have clients, we have horses, they want to play at the top level, And so, and I have to make that experience for them fun, because we're going to lose. If you're really good, Gary, in horse racing, I am going to lose 80% of the time. A coach would not last a month with that kind of percentage. So, there's ups and downs, there's peaks and valleys. A lot of the peaks the lows are very low. So, but at the same time, I have to not only care for the horses and make sure they're ready, but also make it a fun experience for the horse owners. And that's what I really enjoy. I love the people I train for. A lot of them are my friends. They all have different personalities, just like the horses. So, and you meet so many great people. I've met from all phases of life. I've met presidents. I've met leaders of the countries like Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed of Dubai, and Saudi. I've met different princes of everybody. You just meet so many people from all walks of life, and that's the fun part of it all. Where growing up in Nogales, Arizona, I never dreamt of being a horse trainer or anything. I didn't know what I was going to do, and so I basically promised my mother I would graduate from college. I went to the University of Arizona, which TCU put a good shellacking on us last year, and but it's fun, and so I really enjoy sports, especially football. I can't wait till the football season gets going.
Let me ask you, if a young man, young woman came to you today and said, Bob, as we've gotten in my career, Gary's career, we get them say, I want to do what you do. I want to be Bob Baffert one day, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them? And really, what made you turn to what you do now for a living?
Well, I think when I got in the game, horse racing was very popular. Back in the 70s, matter of fact, Lafitte Pincay, the jockey, was in the 70s, early 70s, was the highest paid athlete in the United States. He was making more money than any ball player, before television took off.
That's
And
cool.
and like Willie Shoemaker was doing commercials. Horse racing was really cool. I mean, it was huge. And now it's changed. There's so many different sports now, and with football and basketball, baseball, that with horse racing sort of, it took a back seat to a lot of these big sports. And but if I'll tell someone young, you better really have a passion for it, love it. I think it's like being a football coach or any kind of coach. Gary, if you want to play at that top level, it's 7 days a week, and
Oh
and
yeah.
you're only as good as your last big win. Okay, that's the way it works. And if you get a little stink on you, they'll forget about you. So you've got to really work hard at it. And just because you had a good year, that doesn't matter. And I've never, since probably 19, I don't know, the last 40 years, I've never let up on the gas pedal. I just go strong, but I enjoy it. It's something that you have to make a lot of sacrifices. There's things in your life. There's no vacations. I still owe my wife Jill a honeymoon. One of these days I'll get it. I don't really. The only time I travel is to a racetrack. So, but we have fun.
Sounds like you and I, and even Lance over here, you and I are very similar. It was a 70-day a week. She said, I married you when you were working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when I kind of semi-retired, she said, hey, I married you for lunch, better or worse, but not for lunch. And so you just need to understand, you got to find something else to do, because I've had a perfectly good life while you've been busy. So I understand completely.
Do you
No,
ever? Oh, go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you, just like with Gary, I know how hard he's worked. I know how hard coaches work. That's my life, being around broadcasting sporting events. You see, I've seen you in action. I've watched you watch your horses train out at Del Mar Racetrack in California. The passion that you show, the knowledge that you show. Some people, as John Madden would always say, some people have that. When did you realize this is something that I can do and I can do well in your career?
Well, that's a good question, because when I first started out, I only trained my father's horses because I really didn't know anybody, and I trained, and my father's horses that we bred, they weren't really that good of horses. And I went one summer, I trained, I had this one horse, and I won a couple races, but I couldn't win a stake race. And he'd run really well, and there were so many disappointments, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I just got away from it. I got away from it, and I actually was out of college, and I spent a year in Nogales as a substitute teacher, Gary, and because my mother was a principal. And so I get a call at 6 in the morning. Some teacher didn't show up. From first grade, third grade, junior high, high school, wherever they put me, I went, and I think it was like $30 a day, and I worked 5 days a week, and then I'd drive up to Tucson, which is an hour, to go hang out and have a good time and go back. And so I spent the whole year. And after doing that, I realized these teachers, they're really work hard. That's a lot of work. And I was basically a babysitter, but I decided that is not what I want to do. And so I just got lucky, and I fell into. I got a job with some guy that wanted me to take care of a couple of mares and for him at Prescott, Arizona, and then he wanted me to buy him a horse to maybe run at Prescott. So I bought this little horse at Los Alamitos from a friend of mine, and then he ran. He qualified for the futurity, and all of a sudden these other guys saw that I was doing well. So then they decided to give me. They said, "Why don't you go on your own?" And what happened? My father was holding me back with our horses that we were breeding, Gary. And all of a sudden, I started getting better horses, and I started getting good results, and it just snowballed. And I went from having one horse, two horses, 10 horses. Pretty soon, I had a whole barn load, and I started really. Then I had that confidence that what I could do it, I could compete, and I was and one thing about it, I'm a student of the game. I want to learn, I want to get better. So I'm very curious. I ask old timers, if I have a issue with a horse. So I'm constantly learning. I'm a better trainer today than I was a year ago. So I never quit learning, and so I think that's something that the passion has kept me there.
That's a great story. Yeah, it seems like that's one theme that goes along with everybody that's great at what they do, is that they always talk about that when they get up in the morning, they're still learning. They never ever think that they know everything about it, but they also say that I'm a lot better than I was a year ago. So you could be the front of a book for all these people that whatever profession they do, because that's exactly what they say all the time. So and it's going to be fun for me now that I've gotten to know you better. Now I get a chance to follow this a little bit closer. I didn't know a lot about. I like watching horse races. I never knew a lot about it. Now I'm going to have to really dig in and find out all the things that really go along with it, because it sounds like to me coaching in college and doing what you do goes hand in hand when it comes to everything you have to do. It's a thankless job that takes a lot of hours to get done.
But you know what, Gary? When things go right, it's a fantastic reward. That's what I love about this sport. And I tell people, no matter what, there's always one spot through the year that I'll say to myself, you know what, I should have done something else. I should have been a farmer. I should have, maybe, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm beating my head up. But then all of a sudden, I'll just come out of it. I'll be in a little funk for about a couple of weeks, and thought, oh no, this is a lot better than getting a full-time job. So, and it's one of those things where my mother, when I decided to be a horse trainer, my mother was not happy with that. She says, you can't make a living being a horse trainer? And she was right, in Arizona, because the horses that we had. I said, no, Mom, I'm going to give it a try. And I think I can do it. I can always, and I've always made goals for myself. I give myself 3 years. If I can't make it to the top where I want to go in 3 years, then I'll try something differently. And I think it takes 3 years to really, like when I went to the quarter horse racing, I became the leading trainer in Arizona with quarter horses. Then I made the switch to Los Alamitos with big time quarter horse racing. So I took my best horses. I gave myself 3 years. Within 3 years, I was one of the top trainers there. When they made the jump to thoroughbreds, like in 1990, around there, 80, it was very intimidating. And so I gave myself 3 years, and within 3 years, I was, I was doing really well. So, I think when I was a jockey, Gary, I kept, I was fighting my weight, and I'd go out. I went to California. I rode some races. I won a couple of races there. And there was this jockey, his name was Bobby Adair, and I idolized him. He was one of the best quarter horse jockeys ever. And so I was at Relito one time in Tucson, and he came in there to ride some futurity trials with nice horses. And he asked me if I was going to come back to Los Alamitos this summer. And I said, no, I'm not going to go. And he said, why not? Because I'm not good enough. And he said, if you don't think you're good enough, if you don't think you can be one of the best, you need to quit and do something else. And I'll never forget. I was driving home that night, and I go, "Wow, that my idol just told me that in the nicest possible way, that I suck at what I do." So I quit the next day, and I didn't have a problem with it.
No, you know, when if you're talking with novice people about horse racing, and you train quarter horses. I've been to Ruidoso, New Mexico, seen quarter horses run. Obviously, quarter horses is a big deal down in Dallas Fort Worth with cutting horses and things like that. And then thoroughbreds, they run at Lone Star Park, where Bob is part of the Hall of Fame there at in Lone Star Park between Dallas Fort Worth and between Dallas and Fort Worth. How do you explain the difference in training quarter horses and thoroughbreds? Obviously, the quarter horses run a quarter mile and thoroughbreds run longer distance, but what is the real difference in training both styles of horses?
Well, basically, when I was training quarter horses, I had car payments. With thoroughbreds, I don't have any car payments, boys. But it's a totally different thing. It's quarter horses. Once you get them fit, you don't have to really do much with them. You know, they don't have to go to the track every day. It's a controlled runaway. For thoroughbreds, you want them to relax the whole way, and you want them to run the last quarter of a mile. With quarter horses, they just leave the gate. And they have to be very. And if you have them happy, healthy, and sound, they will break. If they don't, they will not break. And once they miss the break with a quarter horse, it's over. Thoroughbred can break slow and make it up down the way. They can come running. But with a quarter horse, it was basically you get them fit. And what we used to do, all our races it's all about the 2-year-olds. And where they had these quarter horse fraternities where they would run, they'd pick the 10 best horses out of, you know, 100 horses trials, the 10 fastest times. So there was just, the very little margin of error. So, and you had to have these horses qualify, and then you wanted to run even better like a week later. Now they've spread it out to 2 weeks, but it used to just be a week between the trials and the finals. So with that experience, I learned how to bring a horse up, the peak, the following, so that quarter horse mentality has really helped me. And Wayne Lucas, who was one of the greatest, he came from the quarter horses, and he's the one that opened it up for us quarter horse guys when he went to the thoroughbred world. So I think that experience, really helped me. And with thoroughbreds, Gary, there's a lot of more involved. Like you have to figure out how far does your horse want to run? Is he a sprinter? Does he just want to go 6 furlongs? Does he want to go a mile? Some can run a mile, some can't. So you have to figure out what your horse wants to do, what his style of running is going to be. Where a quarter horse, it's, gate opens up, it's pedal to the metal. There's no rating or nothing like that. So I had to really learn a lot really quickly. And when I first got into business, what I did is I went immediately to all the old timers, the great trainers that were at Santa Anita, and I would just talk to them for hours, just pumping information out of them. And I would learn like in 20 minutes what it took them a whole lifetime to learn. They would tell me, why, how do you buy a horse? What do you look for? And I remember Laz Barrera, he's a great trainer. He won the Triple Crown with a firm. He was just a character. And he said, all I know is when you go to horse sales, all the horses that are, their conformation, don't worry about their conformation. It just buy what you like. Seattle Slew, they said his foot turned out a little bit. He wasn't perfect, and I wanted to buy him. They said, no, we don't. And he was one of the best horses that ever ran. And so with that, I just go to these horse sales, and then, if their conformation wasn't perfect, I would buy them, and you get them cheaper, And so I bought a Kentucky Derby winner for $17,000, because I had all this intel from these guys. And Charlie Whittingham, I was stable next to him, and he would tell me about, all his mistakes. And that's one thing about it. You run in these big races. I think for a coach, I'm sure after a win or a loss, you think, what could I have done differently? What could have made a difference? And you go back, maybe you know what I mean? And so you take this, you take all this information that's in your head from experience, and then you remember it. So if you, get to that spot in your life again, you say, oh, I remember this. I'm going to do this, with this horse or whatever. But the thoroughbred world, it was totally different. It was very intimidating at first, but once I realized that, wait a minute, I think I can train with these guys. Once you get that confidence, I think as a coach, you probably figure, you know what, I can deal with this. And so it's once you have that confidence, Gary, then you're okay.
It's again the same way. So I used to go on this Nike trip. Mr. Knight would take us all on it, and I was the youngest guy on the trip, and so all the head coaches were on the trip. It was Joe Paterno and Bobby Bowden and Lavelle Edwards and Frank Beamer, and just the list would go on, and everybody else would go out to the beach and get to the sun. Well, they were at an age they didn't like to, so they'd sit in this social room. I just took my pad and paper just like you did and just asked them, because nobody knew, same thing with you, nobody knew the problems that a head coach had except head coaches, and they couldn't really talk to anybody else. So I would just sit there and I'd keep filling up their iced tea glasses if they just keep talking to me. So again, we all have to learn from somebody, and the only person I say yes dear to is my wife. So it keeps me balanced.
Well, I never worked for anybody. I mean, I wish I could have. I put in for a job with Wayne Lucas. He couldn't remember when I was out of high school, and I called him up, and he was really nice to me. I wanted to gallop horses for him, but he'd already had somebody, and so. But it would have helped me to work for somebody. But so I had to learn by trial and error, and it was mostly error, Gary. And so, but that you learn the hard way, and but I just. You just got to stick with it, and you just got to, there's going to be some tough times, and you just got to get through it. If you can get through it, and that's the thing. And once you do make it, then when you get to the top like that, and you have that success, then the expectations are really high on you. So then you have to keep it going. Every year I said, well, how can I have a better year than I had last year? And so you try to better it. And so, and I think with that kind of mentality that I have, I just want to be better than I was the year before.
That's what John Madden said after a Super Bowl we were doing when they were carrying Bill Parcells off the field. He said, it's the greatest time of your life, the greatest moment of your career. The problem is you'll wake up tomorrow morning and you go, how do I do that again? And that's what you're saying. No matter how many wins you have, no matter the 2 Triple Crowns you have, you probably the next morning wake up and say, how do we win again? I mean, I guess that's your mentality, and that's what makes you so successful.
Well, actually, I woke up the next day and said, how did that happen? I came from Arizona, Nogales, border town. How did that happen? I didn't watch a thoroughbred race till my first Derby, I think I watched in 1971 on a black and white television. But it was, it's just something that, I take different turns in life, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do until I was 27 years old. And so I'm a slow maturing kind of guy, but when I finally figured it out, then, I think, it's not going to happen to a lot of people that are, it just took me a while to figure out what I really wanted to do.
I've always wanted to ask you this when I'm out at Del Mar and I'm watching you train horses, and I didn't want to bother you about it because I'm curious. In my profession as the coordinating producer, we, just like what Gary would do getting ready, we get ready for a game, a golf tournament, a car race, whatever it is. It takes us whatever days it is to get ready, and then we do the broadcast. And same thing with coaches. Gary will spend all week long preparing each day to play in the game on Saturday. when you're getting ready, and you could talk about any race, like in the next few days, probably at Del Mar, you have probably numerous horses running, and you probably have horses running all over the country, maybe the world, in the next few days. But let's talk about the week of the Kentucky Derby, Preakness, Belmont, these huge races that normal fans know about. What goes into the week getting ready for that Saturday at the Kentucky Derby? You know, you train the horse, and you're talking to the jockeys, you're talking to whomever it is, getting ready for that race. Walk us through a week of you preparing for a race like the Kentucky Derby.
And how's that different from a race that's not as magnified? As
Well, I mean, a lot has to do with the horse that you're bringing to any major race. Like this week, for instance, we have the Del Mar, the Pacific Classic. It's our signature race. It's $1 million race. It's this week, and it's going to be a it's a lot of people show up, and I have the slight favorite. It's a horse that looked like he was going to be a Kentucky Derby horse. Had some setbacks, came back. He's a really nice horse named Nisos, and but when you go to the Derby, and you go there with a horse like American Pharoah. I remember American Pharoah. I had two horses, American Pharoah and Dortmund. Dortmund had won the Santa Anita Derby. American Pharoah had won the Arkansas Derby and looked just unbelievable doing it. And so you go in there, and the thing you worry about is that your horses, you want to keep them healthy. You want to make sure, like, they don't get sick. They don't, so many things can go wrong, and you get there, and you just want to keep them just happy, watch them gallop, just stay focused on your own horses. Don't see what people are doing with the other horses. Don't get involved like that. And so it's a lot of pressure when you have a chance to win it. It's exciting. And if you go in there with a horse that's sort of a long shot and down deep, this horse is not. He can't compete. Then it's a different feeling. It's like, well, and sometimes I take other horses for the undercard. There's other races that are nice that I go for. But when you go to a race like the Derby, and you have the horse that can win it, to me, it's challenging. You have to really rely on your experience and watching your horse closely, and so making sure that everything goes right. And you're tense, you're nervous. I really, like they have these little parties and stuff. I really don't want to go to any parties. I don't really want to talk to anybody, but unfortunately, we have to talk to the media.
You have a purpose.
I'd like to be like Marshall Lynch, like I'm only here so I don't get fined. I'd like to do that,
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things when you're just there, and you put until you get the saddle on the horse, and that horse leaves the paddock, then it's out of my control. I just take a deep breath. I'm relaxed. I just hope that when the gate comes open, he breaks well, and when he turns for home, that we get to cheer. We get to root for the horse. And so, and then when it works out, there's not a greater feeling than winning the Kentucky Derby. It's the greatest feeling, and it's the most rewarding. And it's the only race that after you win it, you just can't wait to get back there. You want to win it again. That's our Super Bowl. The Derby is like the Masters is to golf. It's one of those signature races that it's historic, and I got to enjoy it with my parents while they were still alive, and that's what made it great. So I have really great memories, from horse racing. It's taken me to heights that I never dreamt of going to, and so it's just if a guy like me can make it, anybody can if you just put your mind to it.
Would you say, but that, so like when we'd go on a trip, I mean, we'd take our own chef. We make sure that the food was fixed a certain way. I mean, did you take your own hay, take your own feed, making sure that nothing when you went to a different horse race or whatever they fed them? I mean, you controlled all the variables. Would you say that you did that, or did it matter? Like for us, is everything we did, all the way down to how we set in a meeting, how the meeting rooms had to be, when we went over, did all of it. Would you our horses? Do you train when you get a horse within 24 hours or even 48 hours? Is that kind of one of those way that you do it when, like with us with players, or were our horses kind of that way too? Do they like routine, where you do things the same way with them so you get them ready?
Yeah, they're very routine. What we do is wherever we go, we make sure we take the same feed, the same grain. Um, they have usually all the big tracks. They have the same quality brand hay grain that we all use at the major races, and so basically that doesn't change. The bedding might be different. Sometimes we'll bed them on straw. If the straw is not good, we'll bed them on shavings, wood chips. And so, but basically we try to keep them, the same. And we fly these horses. A lot of people are surprised that we fly these horses to get to the racetrack. Like in the old days, they used to put them on a train to go to East. You can imagine being on a train. But they used to have a plane called Tech Sutton where we'd load them up and they would land in Louisville, get off there and go to the track. But now that company went out of business, so now we have to FedEx our horses. So they have to go to the airport, wait there a couple of hours, get in a box. They lift them, they put them in the airplane. They'll fly them to Indianapolis, Indiana, or somewhere, and then they have to van down 4 or 5 hours to get to Kentucky. So it's a little bit tougher to get there now. But before, these horses would come off that plane and we'd run them 3 days. You run them 3 days off the plane, they would just run great. I mean, a plane trip doesn't affect most horses. They'll come off the van feeling well. They're not like us after a long flight. We're exhausted, we're tired, but and some can handle it. And unfortunately, I had one horse I always worry about a horse getting sick, and I had one horse get sick last year for the Preakness. It looked like a layup, and he got there, he had a temperature the next day. But I always used to worry about that with American Fair. All my Triple Crown winners, because they're really, and they're going through a lot of stress, and they're running constantly, and their immune system starts getting lower. And so, and if there's a horse that has a bug in the barn or in the trailer or something, you're always worried about that. So there's never a moment where I can't just completely relax like the night before. You're just always on pins and needles until they get in the gate.
What do you tell the jockeys the day of the race? What do you talk about, if you do talk to them, about what's going to happen?
We'll talk. I might talk to them like for the Derby. We'll figure it out like the night before. What I do is when you ride guys like these top riders like Mike Smith, Johnny Velasquez, Gary Stevens, all these great riders. They're like the great quarterbacks. If they have the receivers and the running backs, you just have them all healthy and they'll get the job done. A great jockey keeps a good horse from getting beat. So I just let them know. A lot of times they've never ridden a horse before or whatever. I just tell them what the horse doesn't like and what he does like. And I'll tell them, look, at this horse, if he doesn't make the lead, he just gets mad. He won't run. Some horses like to run on the lead. And a lot of my horses, they run sort of near the front. I train them, for speed. And so, we've always had a motto, pass me to win, and so, but a lot of people know that and the Derby's getting tougher now because everybody's trying to do the same thing. And they're all these horses the last few years, they're winning from way off the pace. And so, So you have to teach your horse if you can relax a little bit or whatever. But usually these riders, they especially for the Kentucky Derby, a lot of riders get very nervous, and it's the only race where you'll see, Gary, good horses on their charts. They'll get beat 30, 40 lengths. These are good horses going a mile and a quarter, and you'll never see that again, because when you have 20 horses and they're all vying for the same spot in the first turn, a lot of them have to take up, or they're bumping. It's like at the beginning of a Indy 500. It's just everybody's spinning out, bumping into each other. And the one that, if you can get clear of all that, then your horse, and get them in a nice rhythm where they're breathing. And that's the key, is to get your horse in a nice rhythm where he's breathing and he's just running smoothly. He'll last the whole trip. But if he have to take up a couple times something, it scares him a little bit, and or the kick back, the dirt. A lot of horses can't handle that, and their lactic acid kicks in and they get tired.
I would have never thought that.
No, I wouldn't have never thought that either. You always see the walkout. You always see them saddling them in the paddock, and you're wondering what's going on. What's the conversation going on between trainer, jockey, talking? You know, is it the trainer? Is it the jockey? Is the horse? It's a combination of really all three, and being prepared like you've done in your whole career. When you I noticed at the Triple Crown races, and I might be wrong about this, but it seems like you don't really sit in the stands. You have like an area down somewhere that you stand and watch the race. Is that true? And if it is, why do you do it that way?
Well, I usually, like when I go to the Derby, usually watch from the paddock. I used to watch from the stands, but I like to be in the paddock because there's not a lot of people around, and I want to be able to. I watch it on the screen, and if I go to the box area, there's a lot of you can't really see that well, and I sort of want to have my space to watch it, and so. I was one year. Bill Belichick was hanging around with us for one of the Justify owners, and we were at the Preakness, and he was telling me, what's it like being a horse trainer? I said, well, it's fun when things go right, but the only thing is when I'm at the races, I said, you imagine you're calling a play, you're trying to score a touchdown, and some fan comes up to you and wants to take a selfie with you, and I don't want to be rude and say, dude, I'm working, and so that's why I like to sort of be off on myself, or, I can be just usually with my wife or my kids or whatever, where we can just be there together and sort of enjoy it ourselves.
Have you ever watched the race, and I know you probably have, where your horse, either famous race or a race that you do every weekend at tracks, you ever see a race where your horse starts and you go, well, it didn't start well enough, and this is going to be hard, and then all of a sudden they win, or vice versa, where they start well and then you go, well, we got this one in the bag, and then it doesn't end well? How do you know right off the bat when the race starts you got a good chance to win the way the horse started?
Well, it really, I sort of have an idea leading up to the race how the horse is doing, and then when I put the saddle on them, I can usually tell the way they're acting in the paddock. It's a big tell. If they're sharp, if they're bright, and I can tell, well, this horse, I can tell when they're saddling them. I can feel their power. Otherwise, sometimes they'll be in there, and if they're just completely like quiet, then you start like, oh, wait a minute, this horse is not, you know what I mean? He's just not on it today. And so, and I've had some of those fool me, and they run well, but usually when they break cleanly, and they get once they get into the first turn, that's where the race is won or lost, or when they break or their post position can hurt you. But once once you see that the rider has him in a nice groove, and I know I said, well, from here, there's no excuses. He should win. I had one horse that probably one of the greatest horses I ever trained. His name was Arrogate, and he didn't run in the Derby or the Classics, but he won the Breeders' Cup. He made 17 million like in about 6 months. He's a leading earner ever. And I took him he won the Breeders' Cup, he won the Pegasus Cup, he won the Breeders' Cup, the Pegasus Cup in Florida. Then I took him to Dubai, $12 million race, and he was the heavy favorite. And there was another good horse in there, and he always breaks. Usually he's going to be near the lead or right there, and he's in the gate, and the gate comes open, and he doesn't come out of the gate. He just breaks so slow, and they just squeeze him out. And if you watch it on YouTube, it's a Arrogate Dubai World Cup. It was like the most Secretariat-like kind of race that a horse that I've ever had, and he just had no chance at all. He was last, and I was just, I was thinking, I came all this way for this, just terrible. And halfway through the race, he was still back there, no hope at all. And all of a sudden, he just came on at about the 3/8 pole. He starts moving a little bit. I go, wow, maybe he'll run fourth. And all of a sudden, when he turns for home, there's a horse called Gunrunner who ended up to be horse of the year that year, great horse. He just gallops right by him like he's tied to a post. And it was the most unbelievable effort I've ever seen, that I've ever trained a horse. The performance, it was like unbelievable performance. But that horse really was something that when you have horses like that, you go, wow. Like, to me, Secretariat has always been the bar. I want a Secretariat. I want to win race by 31 lengths, but that's probably the closest that I came. And speaking of Secretariat, the owner, Ms. Penny Chenery, she was great, and she was a great ambassador for horse racing. And every time we went for a Triple Crown race, I went through 5 of them, but she had to sort of give you her blessing, because if Secretariat had won it, and she'd always show up for the race. And when I finally won it with American Pharoah, I remember walking down, and I saw her, and I gave her a big hug, and I whispered in her ear, I says, he's no Secretariat, but this is the closest I'll get. And she said, you darn right, and I'll never forget that. But to me, it was winning the Triple Crown. It's the only time I've felt, Gary, that it wasn't about me. It's about the horse. The horse he's the one that he's part of history now. There's only been 13 of them. It's so difficult, and I know why. It's very difficult to do. And so that's the first time I ever felt. I just wish my parents would have been around to see it. Unfortunately, they weren't. But I'm just so proud of the fact that if it wasn't for my father, who loved animals and got me he loved horses, and it was his passion that got me involved in it. Without that, you would have never heard of me, or I don't know what I'd be doing.
Well, it's funny that you brought up Secretariat, because I think most of the world, the movie that was on Secretariat, that's about as much knowledge that a lot of us have about horse racing, unless you dive into it. So for me, everything you've talked about has just been fabulous. So it's like, I'm going to look at a horse race a lot, because I'm a guy that likes to research and follow and see why people do things. I'm going to look at this thing anytime I watch it now. I'm going to look at it a lot different. This has been the information you said. You may not think that you're saying much, but for me, it's like, I'm going to look at this like, this is a whole, like, my eyes are open now. It's like, I'm looking at this a whole lot differently than I would have, just because of the day-to-day operation, how you get them ready, how you thought about it, how you started. I mean, it's a way cool story. I'm glad that you agreed to come on, because it's a lot different.
Tell us, because we hear it all the time as novice fans. We hear it all the time. Why is Triple Crown so difficult to win?
Well, because it's difficult because you have to run in the prep races in order to qualify to get in, and they started that a few years back. But you run your horses, and then you run in the Kentucky Derby. You're going a mile and a quarter, and they've never been that far. A lot of them, most of them are milers, mile and an eighth, whatever, and you're stretching that extra eighth of a mile, and then you have to come back 2 weeks later and go a mile and 3/16, which is a little bit shorter. And then come back 3 weeks later and go a mile and a half, which they'll never run a mile and a half again in their lives. It's a very rare distance. So a lot of horses, what they've done now is that they'll run in the Derby and they'll skip the Preakness, they'll freshen their horses up and wait for you at the Belmont. And so now it's like if American Pharoah would have run, if all those horses would have run in the Preakness and in the Belmont, the same horses, he would have won the Triple Crown by probably 25 lengths. He would have done the same thing. But now it's more difficult because these guys are waiting for you. They freshen up their horses and they're coming at you. And so you have to take on a whole new group of horses.
I have two more questions, and then we'll say goodbye. One of the things I enjoyed watching the Triple Crown this year is what NBC and what Fox did with you and Dwayne Lucas. I know horse racing and sport, and we lost the great man a few months ago, but it was wonderful to watch him. It was like a proud dad talking to you and you talking to someone that you could tell the love and the respect that you had for that great man. What was the relationship that you had with him, and what did he do to make you even better in your profession?
Yeah, he came from the quarter horse world. And I remember seeing him the first time. He came into a little bush track when I was like 17. And he rolled in there with his fancy trailers and these high priced quarter horses and just cleaned up. And he brought what he did is he brought a lot of elegance. He made the bar higher. And to me, he was always the bar. And in quarter horse, he revolutionized the quarter horse business. He was the first one to ever purchase a horse for 100,000 at a yearling sale when the quarter horses, that would be ridiculous then. And he knew how to bring owners into the game, clients into the game, and set up a pattern. And he'd have the best horses on the grounds. He'd go out and work hard. He was great at drafting, and he was an ex-coach. He was a basketball coach, and so he brought those coaching skills with him. Matter of fact, if he was coaching today in the NIL era, those other coaches wouldn't have a chance against Wayne Lucas. He knew how to extract capital out of people. He was so good at it, but he also had the results, and that's what you need. If you don't have the results, you can't do it. So, he came. Then he switched over to the thoroughbreds, and he took a lot of those quarter horse guys with him, and all of a sudden he made a huge splash, and he changed thoroughbred racing. He started these satellite barns everywhere. So he had barns in New York, Kentucky, or usually in those days, everybody, they had 30 horses. Well, that was the limit at the time. And you just stayed at New York or Kentucky or wherever you were. But he had like 30 horses at every racetrack. And he started winning every major race. He'd get them on a plane. It was D-Wayne off the plane. And I learned from him the business part. I would listen to him, and the way he handled his business, and he was optimistic about everything. And he taught me how to, a lot of our clients, they don't know anything about horse racing, and he would educate them, and he would tell them, look, if you want to play, you've got to play at the top level. And even to the very end, he only wanted to play at the top level. And he was a fierce competitor at one time. We were really fierce competitors with each other. But one thing we had in common is that we were basically quarter horse guys, and we were sort of like, we didn't have the political pedigree of these old timers that grew up, in the in Kentucky and all that stuff, and we came in there and made a big splash. So it was just fun and to talk to him and talk about the old days and all the people that we knew, and he still was a great horseman. He knew how to buy a horse. He knew how to buy a good horse, and we talk about it. He'd buy a horse, and if I didn't buy a horse, I'd look to see who bought it, and it was Wayne bought it. And I'd go tell him, "Oh, I wanted that horse so badly," and he goes, "Oh, it makes me feel better because when you know that Wayne's bidding on a horse, you're on the right horse." And so, but Wayne was there'll never be another guy like him. He was something. He just worked hard until the last day, and he got on his horse every day, and I'm really going to miss him because we were had great conversations. And actually, just by accident, I had a stable there, and I left early, and I had one horse left there. It belonged to my wife, so I gave it to him to train the last few weeks, and that happened to be his last winter. Was for my wife and I, which you couldn't make that up, and so. But yes, he was a trailblazer in the quarter horse and the thoroughbred business, and he opened the door. I mean, if he hadn't gone to the thoroughbred world, I might still be training quarter horses.
I've been fortunate. I came across years ago doing the San Diego golf tournament. I said to the concierge at the hotel, I always turn right to go eat. I want to go left. She said, go to this restaurant in Del Mar called Pamplemousse, which happens to be across the street from the backstretch of Del Mar Racetrack. I met a gentleman who owns it, Chef Jeffrey Strauss. All the racing over the last month or so, couple months, that's where they congregate after the races over the weekend in Del Mar at Pamplemousse, Jeffrey Strauss, and then his brother Bill, who loves horse racing. So they kind of got me involved in horse racing at Del Mar track, which led me to meet Bob and his family and watch him work. As a novice, Gary and I could pretty well say we're sports fans. Mm-hmm. And we love not only watching sports, we love how it takes to be successful in the sport. So as a novice race fan, if you're talking to me, Bob and Gary, and you say, boy, you need to get involved in horse racing, and I mean maybe as a fan, not as an owner or anything like that, how do you explain to people how special horse racing is to be a fan?
Well, I really think, horse racing is like all sports. If you pick a team, you get to go to the races, and you get to wager on a horse. And if you wager, it's just like going to sports. What made NFL so popular? Because people started gambling on football or have pools or whatever like that. And so you have an interest. You can't own a franchise, but if you can own a racehorse, it's like you own your own team. But if you go to the races and enjoy the pageantry of the Derby or something like that, but just being around they're great athletes, getting up close. In horse racing, you can walk right up there and watch from the rail. It's like you have courtside seats. You can watch them up close, and you can see the jockeys up close. You see the horses up close, and the way they're acting, and you see they're just these great athletes. But you can also, you can put a little wager on them and try to root them home. And if you see your horse win, the excitement, the adrenaline when they turn for home, and the horse that it's coming, that you have when you put a little wager, it makes you like your own part of that horse. So that's what makes it exciting. And you meet a lot of interesting people at the racetracks and that's the best part of it is racing. I've made some really great friends, and it's like a social network everywhere you go. You meet really interesting people, and there's nothing more fun than to talk about horses, because people want to know the number one reason. They say, how did you get in it? How do you get in that? You just don't, it just happened because my father. But but once you get, horse crazy, or you watch, it's like any sport. Once you start watching it, then you realize if somebody explains it to you. Unfortunately, we haven't been very good at explaining horse racing, and we just don't. We're not on television. We have our own, FanDuel television network if you want to watch races, but you just see a race after race. It's screen to screen, track to track. So it'd be like having a bunch of games, going on at the same time. But basically, you just go and hope that you. And if you get in racing, you get around the right kind of people, like anything, and you'll have a good time.
Gary, that's what's happened to me between Jeffrey and Bill Strauss, being around Bob, watching him work. Every once in a while on the weekend, I'll turn on FanDuel Racing and I'll watch an hour, hour and a half. And they're going all over the place, watching these races all over the world, not just in the United States, but all over the world, watching this racing. And it's because of Bob Baffert that I've become a fan, along with the Strauss brothers. But for myself, I can't believe that we spent the last hour talking to Bob Baffert about horse racing and about his thoughts and his and picking his brain on this sport. I mean, you think about this little podcast that we started a few months ago. This is right up there now with all the names that we've had. And now to have Bob Baffert, like I said at the start of this, when you talk about horse racing, one of the first names you think about is Bob Baffert. And what an hour it's been.
You could be a football coach. I just want you to know you could be a football coach the way you work at it. I have no doubt that you'd go out and pick talent just like we do recruit, and you'd train them, and then you'd get them ready for the game, and you'd go watch them run. So I really appreciate you taking your time, because I know you're a busy guy. Just like you said, you got a big race coming up. So we really appreciate your time coming on our podcast and being a part of this. It meant a lot to Lance, but especially now that I got to know you a little bit, it means a lot to me. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. It's an honor, and I've got to know Lance and his family. They're just the nicest people, and people in Dallas and Fort Worth. I have a lot of friends down there, and like I said, I can't wait to go down there and visit my son and go hit the stockyards.
Well, next time you come, tell Bodie I only live less than a mile from TCU. I'll live there till I die, probably, and always be a Frog fan. So tell him if I can ever help him while he's down here, come look me up on it. I'm sure he's on X or he's on Instagram. He can find Coach Pete. Tell him to reach out and say hello to me.
Well, when I told him I was going to be on with you, he was very impressed. He goes, "Oh, really?" I said, "That's big time, So he knows all about you."
Well, tell him thank you, and thank you yourself.
Thank you, Bob, and great success the rest of the race weeks in Del Mar, and then when you guys head up to Pasadena and wherever you end up having horses running in the next few months and on, and what an honor it's been to have you on. Thank you so much.
Well, the Breeders' Cup is in Del Mar this year in November. So if anybody's never been to Del Mar, the racing is unbelievable.
That's what they call, Gary. They call it the meeting between the surf and the turf at Del Mar Racetrack.
Where the turf meets the surf. That's what it's called.
That's right. Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.